Hi, my name is Tracy Lenz. I'm a petroleum engineer. I am the owner of Pecan Tree. We are a mineral advisory, mineral appraisal firm. And then we also have pecanestimate.com where we do any type of evaluation. And it's like I'm still figuring out the right way to say it, okay? We're working it through it. We do like Zillow's estimates, but for oil and gas. So third party, completely independent. This live stream is to answer questions because we get a lot of questions that come through quite often. And I like to make videos. I like to put out the videos, but they do take quite a bit of time. So this is like the in-between where I can answer the questions. It's not as intensive for the actual like editing of the videos because I was doing all my own editing also for all the other videos on the channel. And if you haven't seen those are on the channel. There's I think we have about 55 videos at this point. So, more than a couple. Always trying to get more topics out there. So always welcome to content that y'all are wanting to hear. So with that, the first question that we're going to look at is, let's see, I have a couple in front of me. Which one do I want to start with? I'll get better at which one I want to start with. I'll try to have that set. Okay. Here's one. I will copy it into the chat so that y'all can see the actual question. It also helps me like go back and put timestamps on this stuff later, because then I can see what question I was answering at the time. Okay. So are operators relying on 3D seismic shot 10 years ago, or do they need new images as the years go by? So there's, like all things in this industry, there's a variety of answers to this question, but normally the Earth doesn't change that much, so most of the seismic is used to find where the depths and the tops of the formations are and how to steer as they're drilling the horizontal wells through the reservoir. So most of seismic is useful. The actual seismic collection is usually a one-time thing. There are a couple situations where you would go back and get new seismic, or reprocessing the seismic is more common than getting new seismic. So one of the biggest issues with seismic is that it's really just sending waves down in the ground and then getting it back, and then what do you do with that? So the actual raw seismic itself doesn't actually tell you much by itself. It has to go through a bunch of processing. And so figuring out how to interpret those waves and how to get the noise out of it so that you can actually see what is happening, and how to address going through certain types of rock and how to make sure that you know what types of rock you're going through. And then as you find out more, you can like feed that back into the old interpretation and then get a better view of what that rock is looking at. And so as it's kind of like an iterative thing. So as you know more about what you're sending waves through, you can get a better interpretation of what those waves are doing and what they're telling you. And so normally reprocessing of the seismic is what happens when people go through and do another like once over on the seismic. But there are a couple situations where you'd want to go back and get new seismic, and that's normally related to seeing what the fluid contacts are doing in the reservoir. And so as you produce in conventional reservoirs anyway, so the typical oil and gas reservoir of the last 100 years or so, there's gas, which is on top of oil, which is on top of water. If you think of the last time you looked at like a vinaigrette, right? There's the air at the top of the bottle, there's the oil in the middle, and then there's the vinegar at the bottom. And you shake it and it kind of mixes up and then it separates again. So that's what's downhole. And so as you produce any one piece of that, so maybe you're targeting the gas cap, normally you're targeting the oil. But if you want to see if that contact between the gas and the oil, or the oil and the water, that oil and water is a little hard to see on seismic, but gas, like where the gas is much easier to see in the seismic. So if you're wanting to see if that's moving, and it's valuable enough to you to see if it's moving, then you can run another seismic and check. Other types of seismic are more like targeted. So there's like microseismic that they use to see what's happening as they're fracturing the wells. So fracking is really just like creating seismic events that you can measure, the same as if there was a little earthquake downhole or if there was any other type of movement of the rock. And so you can do isolated seismic surveys around where you're doing your completion, and then you can see where did the sand go, where did the fluid go, and that's really useful. Some of the microseismic that I've looked at has been some of the more useful things for understanding what exactly that sand is doing downhole in the reservoir. So it's really, okay, I obviously am going to nerd out about it because that's my career, it's my hobby. But I think that this is one of those things that anyone would kind of find at least a little interesting because it's visual. So at some point, maybe I'll find like some pictures and put them up in a video or something. But it's pretty neat to look at. But those are the kind of the two main times that you'd run seismic. And then I think that for some of the water floods and CO2 floods, this has not been something I've been directly part of, is doing seismic on those type of events. But anytime something could be changing downhole in terms of where the water and oil is, then that would be a potential use. But the less of a difference between the two types of fluid or types of rock there is, the harder it is to see a difference in seismic. So that's just something to consider. Okay. What are some good auction sites for the little guy to find mineral rights for sale? So I have a couple. There's ones that I know of. Probably the most go-to historical, as in like the last 10 years, is probably EnergyNet. Then there's also Energy Domain is one of the more modern interfaces, more modern technology behind it, but they're a little smaller. It's more like a hands-on type of deal. There's Oil and Gas Clearinghouse has historically been one. I feel like that's like more like the 20, 30 years type of range, like how long that one's been around. I'm probably not totally right, but just the general timelines on these. If I was just shopping and I wanted to pick up something and just see, like, because usually if you're shopping around trying to like get the small deals, you're going to figure out like what which operators or non-op groups are getting rid of their like small distracting things that aren't interesting anymore. And I've typically seen that go on EnergyNet. So energynet.com, not energy.net, energynet.com. And Energy Domain has been more of the, they're constantly changing how I don't want to like put them in a box, like put words, but I would say that's probably the more mid-sized deals and more. It's not the scraps, but it's also not like the biggest deals. Everything else, there's kind of random places that you would find them. So I've seen oil and gas minerals go for sale on Facebook forums, in any like chat forums. Not that I would want to be like selling mine that place, but they used to trade these things like baseball cards. So anywhere where a car might be sold, that'd be places that oil and gas properties could be sold. There's auction that happens in terms of like distressed auctions. And so anywhere where there's a county tax on the property, if the property hasn't had that tax paid, eventually there's, I think it's like a called a sheriff's auction or something. That'd be a place. Normally I find people come to me saying, what the heck did I just get? So know what you're doing, know what you're getting, know what's actually in it and not in it, because that's usually where I get the most frustrated questions. They're like, oh, I thought I got this whole thing. I'm like, no, you got this little piece, and there's some heartbreak. So just be sure what you're getting. There's always new ones popping up. There's a bunch of shops that their whole business is just buying and selling like 10 or 20 deals a year, and they take their commission off of it, and that's their business. And so there's probably at least a dozen, if not more, websites where there's like a listing that happens there. And then, so like our site, we don't directly buy and sell, but we do interact with a lot of people who want to buy and sell. And so we won't get involved, but we might be able to like send a number to someone of like, hey, this person's trying to sell, or this person's trying to buy. So there's a part on our website that's like Pecan Connect, but it's more of a place for people to eventually like find each other, but not as a listing site. Okay. Next question. Okay, let's see. So I was at a conference yesterday, and I planned on having a little extra time to prep for this, but we're just going to get off the cuff answers. All right, I've been wanting to dig a little more into the whole Arkansas lithium thing before I talked much about it, but I did get a little intel from yesterday, so I'll talk a little about it. So let's see. If someone signs a lease before the royalty board in Arkansas agrees on a standard royalty rate, will those leases be automatically updated with the new standard rate? So what this is in reference to is that in Arkansas, they're trying to set what the royalty is for lithium production. And so this is specifically, there was a string of questions, and so this doesn't reference lithium, but in the rest of the questions, it was related to the lithium production. And I know that this is an oil and gas stream, but the lithium is being produced in a way that is from the water and reservoirs. So it's coming from a very similar methodology as the reservoirs of oil and gas have been produced. And so it's all the same. It's blending in to where lithium is now becoming part of the conversation. And so with the lithium, there initially was a proposal for, I think it was like 4% royalty on lithium, and have that be like the set rate for what the state says is the going rate for lithium royalties. And first of all, there's an organization called NARRO, the National Association for Royalty Owners. Arkansas had used to have a large amount of production in it. The Fayetteville Shale and Smackover. There's formations that were very active and booming. That has since died off a bit, enough that the NARRO organization, the NARRO chapter of Arkansas, decided to disperse. And I'm probably not getting the entire background on all of this, but this is what I've gathered over talking to people and being part of NARRO. And I'm not representing NARRO. I'm just a member. I'm not representing them in any way. This is just my words and my words alone. So the chapter was no longer active. And NARRO typically keeps an eye on the things that would negatively affect the royalty owners that the industry might be trying to do in order to make things easier for the industry, but maybe not in the best interest for the owners. So they keep track of that. They help rules and stuff from being created that impact them that way. They also, any state legislature or federal, anything that could affect the royalty owners in a negative light, they are trying to represent the royalty owners. So I was talking to some people at NARRO. They were like, no, I mean, there should be no set rate for royalty in terms of something that's being produced like that, because it all depends on so many different factors that it needs to be an independent negotiation. Is that your land? Is it somebody else's land? Because the lithium's underground, but I don't know if any of y'all have seen what the surface of the lithium extraction looks like, but they basically have to make these big pools, and then they evaporate all the water, and then what's left is lithium plus all the other stuff that's in the water. And we'll just say this is typically non-potable water. This is not water that you would want like even a cow to like drink or walk in, or a bird to, it's just not like the best water, because it's like it's coming from reservoirs that are intentionally have stuff in the water. That's the whole point of this. So there's just a variety of things that could be in that water or that are in that water. And, it takes up a very large amount of surface acreage while they're, drying it. And then there's just a lot of considerations, and there's pros and cons to both sides. And this is all coming from an industry that has a long history of doing this type of stuff. So there's considerations that should be in place when you're doing these type of leases and making these type of agreements. Also, 4% seems low. We'll just say it seems low. There's also a lot of considerations, but seems low. So if you're going to set it on something, 4% didn't seem like the number. In case anyone watching this isn't as versed on royalty rates, for oil and gas, the like standard starting place is 12.5%. But the more common, if you're in a really like hopping area, like 25% is pretty common. And then if you're in anywhere in between, I would say like 18.75 is the next most common number. So 4% is low, especially, lithium is, it's in all the battery stuff. It's a very, nice material to have. So that would be weird. But so the question is, if the royalty board did set that, would it change the leases that were already established to become that? Now, I don't have the legal expertise in Arkansas to say exactly what would happen, but considering that the proposal was such a low percentage, if let's just say that they did set it at 4%, I don't see how they could make your rate go down. This is just externally, like just my opinion, not non-legal or anything. And then if your rate was below that, like that seems like that's kind of the point of that rule, would be to move it up to that. But just know that it was a very low bar. So you would have to be below that you signed at for it to adjust up to that. So the most likely scenario is that it's not going to be passed and it's not going to be set, and that it won't affect any rates. I do want to dig more into that. I'll continue to share as I gather more information about this, and I'll keep y'all. I know that there's a couple of y'all that have stuff in Arkansas that are interested, so I'll continue to research that and let you know what I know. Okay. Oh, yeah, the other question was, I heard there was a fight between the production companies and royalty organization in Arkansas. Yeah, so that was probably the fight that was being discussed. So, okay. Let's see. So we're at 2:26, and I'll probably only go until 2:45 today, just because it's been a long week. And tomorrow, well, it's Friday. We're going to have a variety of things that happen on Friday. So we'll do our quick sponsor session. So this live stream is sponsored by us, Pecan Tree, and it's not anyone external. It's just, y'all know this goes into our product and our time is all we really have. We don't have sponsors. Don't have any organization that is backing us. Like, we're our own investors and our own money. It's no external organization. So we will hop over to look at a certain feature of Pecan Estimate, and I was working on my transitions, so we didn't have that whole inception moment like we did last week. So, look at that. I'm so fancy. Okay. So there's our questions. Oh, I got cocky. Yep, I got cocky. All right. Well, here we go. Okay. Now we have it up. Okay, so what I wanted to point out today was some new features that our dev team, Jason and JD, have been working on. And we have some So we have this is our pecan estimate. If you get it, you can get our evaluation of your property. This all happens within 30 seconds. And an appraisal takes it the next step and actually has engineers put new eyes on this particular property. But the pecan estimate uses our established model and that starts with the baseline of what we would say. But the thing I wanted to show was some of our new features on the wells. So we have, let's see. When you run an estimate, you will get a listing of the highest likelihood wells and then possible wells. And the high likelihood wells are ones that we say based on your outline here. So you can view the full map. If we just look at the map of where we're talking about, there's an outline of this purple box that this person owns. And it's saying, if you own this property here, which wells should you have interest in and how much? And so because this outline, we're letting you know that you should have interest in this Myra Robinson and then these other Myra Robinsons, but then also these Hercules wells that are on top. And so that's what if we go back to the dashboard, that's saying that these wells have this estimated interest, and those with that estimated interest, you should be making this amount per month. And then the unit factor is saying that that well's unit and your acreage are that much aligned on top of each other. So in addition, there's other wells there's new drilling and new permits that are happening. Those have additional value that will be, once they're online, it will come in. And then there's also possible wells. So for this particular location, there's no possible wells. But if there were, we would show you that, hey, these are wells that you might have interest in. It's on the border. We think that it's most likely that you don't, but there are some situations where there be interest. So it's kind of difficult to find which wells you have an interest in and don't have an interest in. And so we're trying to make it easier for you to identify them and prioritize them. Because then also if it's in a portfolio, which is something else we have, is it will aggregate those together and then let you know what those interests are just in general. So you can see, here's all my properties that I own. Okay, well that's, this is a lot of wells. It's 107 wells. Let me at least sort it by highest, most likely revenue. Or if you have working interest, highest, most likely expenses. And then I can make sure I'm getting paid on them in order based on what's there. Yeah, also so you can click on this to go to that property, and then it will also, we have the links to the either well database if we don't have the state link, or if we have the state's permit files, or if you're in Louisiana, it will send you to the Sonris, or if you're in North Dakota, it will send you to where you can get the well files. That will be there. And then we're slowly populating more and more of those in there. Well database is our data provider, so we're just sending you to that individual wells page for right now. So that's just an overview on the wells, so you can see a little more on what we're doing behind the scenes. And with that, I'll hop back to questions. Let's see if I can do it this time. I did it. Okay. Does your software cover Southeast Ohio, Noble County? I believe we do cover Southeast Ohio. We don't go all the way in to Ohio, but let me go ahead and, okay, we'll look at that live. And twist my arm to show off my software. Okay. So we're on the Pecan Estimate main site, and my dog's gonna join us in the background here. So we go here, go to Ohio, and we'll hit search, and that'll take us to the main page. So yeah, we mostly cover as the Marcellus shale goes down, the Marcellus and my mind is blinking, the other one, goes into this area. And so you can go to the county of interest by going to the search for county, and this will fly us to there. So yes, looks like we are covered that area there. So let's see, do you have a well that you want us to zoom in on? We can do I don't mind continuing. Utica. Yes, thank you, Utica. I don't know what, man, my brain is fried today. I apologize. Let's see. So if you know the well that you're looking for, you can come in here and type any well name. I think you have at least type 3 letters, and then that will start. But let's see. Let's see if it's going to work live. Leased with EOG. No well yet. Okay. Yep. So if, let's say, you know, like the township range, you can, in section, you can zoom on it here, and you can quick create this way. So quick create just creates the property. It's free to create properties. Okay, let's see. How did I? Okay, Encino also leases in the area. Yeah, there's this whole area. Well, you know. So this map is our free version of the map where you can see what's happening, and the darker the red and this purple, that's the higher value areas in terms of there's more production. Some of the biggest driver is how much is producing and drilled in the area. So I bet I could zoom in on these purple areas, and it's probably just more wells. But the rest of it is primarily due to how much is remaining. And as you get to where there's more and more risk that the reservoir quality isn't as good, you get into lower values here. So just to give a quick overview as to what our map is actually doing. And as you zoom in, you can see the actual wells too. Let's see, I wanted to zoom in on like a purple area here. Yeah, okay, so here's these wells. These wells are probably new. That's probably why they're, yeah, so. Sorry, if you can't tell, I really like our product. I think our software is fun, honestly, just to like poke around in. So I never mind poking around if there's anything that y'all ever want to look at. Okay, but I do want to like not make this completely, this is not supposed to be a sales thing. So I promise I will not angle it that direction each time. So, okay. Let's see, I'm struggling with collecting the well log data. Is there a place where I can get the detailed well log data for Wyoming other than the WOGCC website? The images are hard to read through there. Yeah, so the hard thing is if it's the logs submitted to the state are normally the only place that they're publicly available. Now, but there are a lot of geological and core labs and different places that have collected logs over the years and then processed them and made them into digital logs. But you're getting into more of a subscription situation there. And let's see. Are you specifically looking for non-subscription, like free logs, or would you want to be willing to pay for them? Because that's the next differentiator on the log availability. And honestly, a lot of the log sources I know of probably are the interpretations we do are based on just to step back a second. The interpretations we do are more based on the wells and what's being drilled, and then the reported depths and the reported tops. And then we do have a geologist. So Heather Leary is our geologist, and she goes through and does the geologic interpretations for the areas. But because we cover the whole country, we ourselves do not look at logs in terms of like picking tops in the same way that you would be looking at the logs if you were looking to drill. So yeah, so with subscription, looks like subscription enough data works. So let's see, who would be the best log? So I know that like IHS, which is now part of S&P, has logs. I think TGS is another one. TGS, is that? Uh, Enverus has logs. Almost all the data providers have logs in some form. It's just how much of it's digitized and how much of it isn't. But for one particular log, that'd probably be too expensive for what you'd be looking for. So, I'd have to go see what the current best solution for that is. I can let you know if I find anything. We'll put that on my backlog of things that I'm researching, and if I find the answer, I'll follow up in a future Q&A. There's been a couple things now that I have on that list, and so I'll follow up if I have a good specific link. But some of those other ones that I've mentioned are the kind of standard. Let's see. Yeah, I'll let you know if I find any more. Okay. Another question. Cool. If an operator asks you to sign a lease agreement for a well, they say they plan on drilling, but 2 years go by and no well is drilled and the drilling permit expires, would they need to have you sign a new lease after they get a new drilling permit approved? So how this works is, okay, I'm assuming that in the lease itself, so there is one situation where that could be the case, but it's very unlikely. And that would be if in the lease itself, it said that they had to drill that specific well with that specific permit. And then if they did not drill that specific well with that specific permit, then the lease would terminate. I have not seen someone hold themselves to the wall like that. So that'd be interesting if you had a lease like that. But that'd be the first thing to check is, what does the lease say? The most common language in the lease is that there's a certain amount of time that they would have to drill a well, any well. And they sold you on the lease with a plan in mind, but if they change that plan, they're allowed to change the plan without it affecting the lease. So that's the most likely thing that's in the lease. Let's see. Yeah, and most leases are at least a 3-year primary term, so that window they have to do whatever they want to and drill whatever the well they need to drill. That's the primary term, and most leases are 3 years at minimum. I have seen 2 and I have seen 1, so that'd be another thing to check. If they only had a 2-year primary lease with you and nothing happened at the end of 2 years, that would be the thing that was killing it, not they didn't drill that well, but that they didn't do anything in that amount of time. So that's the other thing to check, is what window of time they had to do something. And then if they had more than 2 years, if they could drill any well they want to, then no, you don't need to sign a new lease after they get the new permit approved. It's 2 separate processes. Okay. And actually, just going back to this, it is pretty common for 2 years to go by and no well to be drilled after the lease is initially signed. I would say between the 2 and 4 year mark is where the majority of leases get acted upon, because they're usually building up to that point where they have enough stuff in the same area to put together a drill plan and do the actual plan that they're looking at. So, and because you're never just one well ahead of your drilling rig, you want to get at least ideally 2 years ahead of the drilling rig. And so with that type of timeline, if you add another location that you could drill to your inventory, and ideally you're drilling through the other inventories first before you get to that well that you're adding to your inventory. And once you start getting below a year of inventory, then it gets operationally a little difficult to plan. Investors get nervous. Everybody gets nervous because you're like, what do we do at the end of a year? And then when you get beyond 2 years, it just gets hard to plan out that far, because prices can change, formations can change, our understanding of the formations can change, and who owns the company can change. Your investment capital can change. A lot of stuff can change beyond 2 years, so it gets a little difficult to plan out. And so it's more just general plans beyond 2 years. So that's kind of why I say that. Okay. All right, let's see. Do we have any last minute questions? I will hunt through to make sure I didn't get any in my email real quick. And Kelly, if you see any, let me hop on to make sure Kelly hadn't sent me any. Okay. Okay, yeah, like I said, I'm kind of running out of steam today, so I might we might call it at 2:45, and like I'm doing one last check to see if there's ones that I missed, but have you ever seen this before? Still checking on a couple of these questions that I'm looking at. Okay. There was one more question on how do mid-size and small operators obtain seismic. And just because I talked on seismic already, I'll just add in one final little thought on that. Let me put in there. So on seismic acquisition, because it's so expensive to get seismic, normally what happens is that seismic will be ran by either a larger company or a company that wants to invest a certain amount of capital, or it'll be done with multiple operators joining together, and then put into a like a consortium where you license the seismic, and then you can, with that license to the seismic, then you can use their a third party interpreter, or if you have internal geophysicists that can interpret it. That'd be how you get access to it, is by obtaining the license through a company that aggregates it and has that consortium. And so cores, so coring and seismic are both very expensive things that it's nice if the industry could share, but also because it's so expensive, you want to share in a way that makes use of those funds. And so that is a pretty common way to go about it for anything related to the cores. So coring, in case y'all aren't aware, is when you go down and while you're drilling, you stop and put a special drill bit basically on the end of the big long string. And instead of drilling a hole, you're drilling like a tube, and then you bring that whole tube up to the surface, and then you can look at the actual rock itself that's there. And that's how they can do studies on how much porosity and permeability and the composition of the rock, and what the saturations are locally. And of course, you're getting this little tiny snapshot in something that's a ginormous reservoir. So there's some limits to how much you could extrapolate that little tiny area to the entire reservoir. But considering we're usually, a mile or two away from it, with a mile or two of rock in between us and it, it's much better than nothing. So those two ways, if you combine core with seismic, then you really start getting a good view as to what's going on. But of course, to do the core, you have to have the well, and then wells cost, I would say to drill a well without core is probably a minimum of, the shallowest well right now is probably 500,000 to $1 million for the absolute shallowest, cheapest well. And then you start making them deeper, you start making them horizontal, you start putting gigantic fractures and completions on them, and then you get up to 10, 20 million. So and then you add the core to that, it's probably another $1 million to core. It gets expensive really fast, and seismic can be similar depending on the footprint that you're doing the analysis in. So if you're doing a wide area, if you're doing a difficult area, if there's a lot of hazards, if you're doing a lot of ecological considerations, then seismic, multiple hundreds of thousands to do seismic runs in some areas. And then down to, if you're just doing one little tiny footprint just to monitor a well, then that's probably 100,000, but it goes up very quickly, we'll just say. So anyway, yeah, I think that's all I want to hit on. Again, thank you all for joining me today, and we'll have the replay up on our main channel. Oh, this is the main channel. We'll have the replay up on the video listing. So this is probably in the live stream area. So we'll break it up into at least timestamps for all the questions, and we'll continue to collect any more questions for next week. And again, if you have any, please email them to Kelly, because Kelly is our project manager and she will make sure I don't lose them in my email. I'm willing to take questions from y'all, no problem at all, if you have my email or phone number. I just might lose them. Oh, that is my husband saying it's my birthday tomorrow. Yes, it's my birthday tomorrow. That's also why I'm kind of brain dead today, because I'm already checking out. It's already time for me to just turn it off. So send any questions in and we will continue, because I'm enjoying this still. So as long as I'm still enjoying doing this every Friday, I will take the time to do it. So with that, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next week.